I grew up in what was probably one of the bluest towns in the bluest state in the country, Newton, Massachusetts. My parents were social activists and sociology professors. They're always very curious people and very, of course, ultra liberal people. That doesn't mean any of this made it easier for me to come out in the early 80s. I always loved pop culture. I always loved TV and movies and plays and books. So I think my early crushes were probably from characters that I saw in some of my favorite TV shows. So the first one that I remember was the animated TV show, The Osmond Family. And I had a crush on the animated version of Donny Osmond. And then there was John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. I loved John Travolta's clothes, his moves, his hair, and I wanted to emulate him, even though I was this awkward, overweight 10-year-old. But my parents frequently took me and my sister to films that were generally made for older people, and it gave me an impression of adult life at an early age. Not inappropriately, but just on a kind of curious level, seeing a kind of life that I could maybe look forward to, maybe be afraid of at the same time. When I was about 8 years old, I auditioned and got into a children's theater group, and that really started my love for theater, which allowed me to really express myself and show what I was good at. Because I wasn't a jock and I wasn't a super A student. When I was in junior high school, though, I didn't really have a lot going on. I wasn't in plays initially, and I used to go to movies by myself together quite a bit. I'd go to, double features, art films, old movies, and occasionally I would get hit on by these older men in either in the bathroom or in the auditorium. And fortunately, I never got into trouble or did anything about it. But it gave me this identity of what gay men were because I knew who they were. And I was like, is this what gay men are? They're men that hang out in movie theaters and hit on younger kids. And a lot of the films at that time that I were going to that had gay characters that were contemporary were frequently reflecting that too. Gay men were predatory, they were serial killers, and it made me feel that I had to have this deep, dark secret inside of me that I couldn't tell anybody. Well, that started to change in high school. I started getting cast in plays and meeting other people like me, and I finally found my tribe. There was a bunch of these bohemian theater arts kids that I used to hang out with in the cafeteria, and we used to kind of get into trouble and cut classes, and on the weekends we would take the bus into downtown Boston and go to movies together in restaurants and smoke close cigarettes. And then we used to somehow get access to alcohol, and we would have these parties, probably from our parents, that we used to sneak out of their liquor cabinets. And we would have these parties on the weekends, and sometimes someone would, a parent would go out of town, and we would have the house to ourselves. And this is where a lot of sexual experimenting started happening, both with same-sex and opposite-sex people. And I didn't really see, though, that as an identity for me, like this is who I am. It was just something that I did or that I had to do. But it was also felt a little bit forbidden, a little bit naughty, and not something that we kind of knew about from each other, but that we wouldn't really talk about or sort of, say, hey, is this who you are? But that all changed when I met a friend of mine, Jen, who told me that she was in a relationship with a mutual friend of ours, Rebecca. But what that did is it allowed me to think, I can do that too. I can tell a trusted friend this deep, dark secret I have, and it can be okay. So I did. I told Jen about the fact that I think I'm gay. I'm sure she already knew. So we used to go to bars together. And I don't know how we got in as we were underage, but there were certain bars, I guess, who were lenient about it. There was one night, and we went to this bar, and it was maybe half full, and there was a stage that no one was on, and we had a few drinks, and they started playing the Tom Tom Club. And we got up on that stage, and we started dancing all alone on the stage, and everybody watched us. And I think I felt to myself, I've arrived. Around that time, I was continuing my interest in film and theater, and I was applying to colleges. And my dad used to go to these pop culture conferences, and he would bring back interesting books that he found at the conference for me to read that were about film. One was a book called The Celluloid Closet by Vito Russo, who I'd have the pleasure of meeting when I was in college. And the book was about the representation of gay people in Hollywood throughout history. And it was really groundbreaking, not just for our culture, but also for me and for that course of study, because I realized this is actually a movement. There's actually a community of people that are like me, that understand what this representation means and why it's important. My senior year in high school, I got cast in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I had a pretty small part. It's a part that sometimes even gets cut from a lot of the productions. The part came at the end of the play where I was Philostrate, who was the master of mirth, who would tell the king about all these fun entertainment activities he and the queen could partake in. And the director decided that I should do the character as gay. So he coached me on how to do all the lines with a sexual gay innuendo. And when I would do the performance, it brought the house down, and people would come to see it again and wait for that scene that I was going to be in. And I ended up winning a high school theater award at my graduation, in large part because of that character that I played. I learned that the award was named after this kid that had graduated from Newton North who was very into theater, that I learned from people had killed himself because he couldn't deal with his sexual identity as being gay. So, of course, I thought to myself, is that what's going to happen to me? I was visiting colleges with my parents, and we went to visit the College of UC Santa Cruz. And of course, it's a beautiful campus in the Redwood Forest. They had great arts programs, they had great everything. And the tour guide said to the parents, by the way, if you're gay, if your kids are gay, it's really cool. You can actually talk about it here with everybody. And I thought to myself, that's the college I want to go to. So I applied and I got in. I wasn't really that out. I mean, at that point in the early 80s, even though there was like Boy George and musicians that were taking on different gender identities like Annie Lennox and Laurie Anderson, at that point, I still wasn't really sure, is this going to be something I'm going to be accepted for? So I didn't really date in high school. I didn't really date in college that much until my senior year, when I went to a gay discussion group that my one friend, gay friend Tony, told me to go to. This guy sat next to me who was kind of a hippie, kind of cute. And as it turned out, he had had his eye on me for months and had been following me around a bit. And he saw me at a dance and never asked me to dance because he was too shy. One thing led to another. We ended up getting into a relationship. And that was when I had to come out to my parents because we ended up living together. And then I got into graduate school for film at Columbia, New York. And he decided to move in with me and move to New York. So my parents, I think, were a little bit surprised and probably confused because they used to see me around young women all the time. I guess they didn't quite understand a lot of gay young men are around young women a lot. Those are their friends. And I wasn't dating any of these women. And so it took them some time to get used to it. But, my mother was a political strategist, and she helped get Barney Frank, an openly gay politician, elected in Massachusetts. So she eventually understood the importance of coming out over time. So I was in New York City. I went to see a movie called Longtime Companion. And this was a movie about the AIDS crisis, about a group of gay men in a certain community and how the AIDS crisis decimated that community. And I was really shielded by what was going on with the AIDS crisis in my little college bubble. But that movie made me realize what the reality of what was going on in the world around AIDS. And I decided I really needed to do something, to be involved in what was going on, to help out. What could I do in my part? So the next day I went to the Gay Men's Health Crisis and I said, I want to volunteer. What can I do? And they said, well, we need people on Saturdays to come in and put condoms into packets that we're going to distribute to bars and restaurants all over New York City. So I said, sure. So I showed up and I met a really great group of people, and we were putting condoms into packets. CNN happened to be in the building doing a story on the AIDS crisis. And they filmed us doing this activity. And this was really at the beginning of the 24-hour news cycle. There really weren't any other 24 news stations at the time. So everybody in my life saw this segment of me, as a volunteer for the Gay Men's Health Crisis doing this activity. And my mom was, really happy. Both of my parents were really happy about it because they were activists and they saw that I was doing something interesting with my new identity. And if I hadn't come out before, I was fully out now to the world. And suddenly I had arrived again.